Imagine lying flat on your back on a hill far from any city, looking up at a perfectly clear night sky. The stars are scattered across the darkness like salt on black velvet. It is a sight so ancient, so universal, that it connects you to every human being who has ever lived. Now, I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. As you look up at that vast, dark canvas dotted with lights, what is it that you are actually seeing? Your first answer is probably the universe. You are seeing the universe, but let's push on that for a moment. If the universe is everything that exists, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every atom, then what is that blackness between them? Is that blackness part of the universe? It must be. So the universe isn't just the sparkling lights, it's also the immense dark voids that separate them. But now push a little further. What is beyond the last star? What is beyond the last galaxy in the direction where there is absolutely nothing? No light, no dust, no atoms, no particles? Just a total, absolute absence of anything. What is that? Is that still the universe? If the universe is everything that exists, then a void where nothing exists cannot be part of it, can it? But if it's not part of the universe, then it must be something else. It must be something that isn't. You have just stumbled onto one of the most disturbing, persistent, and deeply confusing questions that the human mind has ever grappled with. The question of what lies outside of everything. The question of what existed before there was anything at all. For most of us, the concept of nothing is a comfortable, simple idea. It's an empty box. It's a room with no furniture. It's a blank sheet of paper. We use the word all the time. There's nothing in the fridge. I have nothing to do today. But in physics and philosophy, in the raw machinery of reality, nothing is the most slippery, unstable, and perhaps impossible concept there is. In fact, the deeper you look, the more you realize that nothing might be a bit like trying to catch your own shadow. The closer you get, the more it runs away from you. Think about that empty box. You say it contains nothing, but does it? Does it contain air? Yes. Okay, so you suck all the air out. Now it contains a vacuum. But does that vacuum contain light? If a single photon from a distant star zips through it for that fleeting moment, it contains something. So you build a perfect box, an indestructible shell, and you place it in the deepest, emptiest region of intergalactic space, far from any stars. You open it, let any stray particle escape, and then you seal it perfectly. After 1,000,000 years, you go back to it. Does it contain nothing? No, it contains space. The box itself defines a region of space. But what is space? Is it a thing? We tend to think of it as a stage, a passive backdrop where the drama of matter and energy plays out. But physics tells us that space is not just a stage. It is an active participant. It can be bent, it can be stretched, it can be warped by gravity. It can ripple like the surface of a pond when two black holes collide. This fabric of space itself, this thing that can curve and twist, that is not nothing, it is a something. It is a fundamental structure of reality. So to have true nothing, you can't just remove the matter. You have to remove the stage itself. You have to remove space. But now we've hit a wall, because to remove space is a bit like asking what is north of the North Pole. The question starts to lose its meaning. Where would this nothing be if there is no space to put it in? The concept of location itself vanishes. This is the first great mystery. The universe is not a collection of things sitting in an empty void. The universe is the void. It is the fabric. The galaxies, the stars, the planets, they are not decorations on the fabric. They are part of the fabric like wrinkles or ripples. When you look at that dark space between stars, you are not looking at nothing. You are looking at the very substance of existence. Now, let's rewind the clock. Let's take this understanding and run time backwards. If the universe is expanding, if those galaxies are all racing away from each other, then in the past they were all closer together. Run the film back far enough, about 13.8 billion years, according to our best calculations, and you reach a point where everything is crushed into an infinitely small, infinitely dense point, a singularity. This is what we commonly call the Big Bang. Here is where the question of nothing becomes not just a philosophical game, but a raw, bleeding edge of science. Before that moment, before the Big Bang, what was there? If everything, all matter, all energy, all the fabric of space, and even time itself was crushed into that single point, then what was outside that point? Our minds trained to think in terms of before and after scream for an answer. We crave a stage. We want to imagine a vast, dark, empty void. And then in the middle of that void, a tiny pinpoint of light appears and explodes. That's the image we all have. But that image is almost certainly wrong. It's a trap our brain sets for us. Because if space itself was inside that point, there was no outside. There was no vast, dark void for it to explode into. There was nowhere for it to happen. And before time itself is a property of our universe. Time is a dimension of the fabric, just like space. If the fabric was crumpled into a point, the dimension of time was crumpled with it. There is no before, because before requires time to flow. Asking what happened before the Big Bang might be like asking what is south of the South Pole. It's not that it's a secret, it's that the question itself doesn't describe anything real. This is where a mind like Richard Feynman's becomes the perfect guide. Feynman was a master of cutting through the fog of complicated language and grand philosophical statements. He would look at a question like what existed before the universe. And he wouldn't start with mythology or even with equations. He would start with a humble, almost childlike question. What do you mean by exist? What do you mean by before? He would challenge you to define your terms. If you say a universe, you have to include everything that is physically knowable. So by definition, anything that is before the universe is not physically knowable. It's outside the realm of cause and effect. It is, in the most literal sense, not part of our reality. It is a no man's land for science. But Feynman was also driven by an insatiable curiosity about the world. He wouldn't just stop at saying, we can't know. He would be fascinated by the attempt to know. He would be fascinated by the paradoxes we run into when we try to imagine absolute nothingness. He would invite you to play a thought experiment with him. Imagine, he might say, that we could somehow erase everything. Not just the matter, not just the space, but the very laws of physics themselves, the laws of gravity, the rules of quantum mechanics, the constants that define how strong an atom is, all of it gone. What is left? What are you left with? You are left with a state of pure potential, a blank slate. But here's the thing that Feynman would find hilarious and profound. A blank slate is still a concept, it's still a framework. The very idea of potential is a rule. It's saying it is possible for something to come from this. But if you have erased all laws, then you have also erased the law that says things are possible. The very notion of possibility is a law. You see, we keep trying to hold on to a little tiny piece of something to act as a placeholder for our thoughts. We imagine a dark void, but darkness is a thing. It's the absence of light. We imagine a silent emptiness, but silence is a thing. It's the absence of sound. We are trying to construct a state of nothing using the building blocks of something. It's like trying to build a dry waterfall. The very words we use betray us. The word nothing is a noun. We give it a grammatical status as a thing, and then we are trapped into thinking of it as a thing. Perhaps the most profound insight into this mystery doesn't come from cosmology, but from the tiny, invisible world of quantum mechanics. It's a world that Feynman knew better than almost anyone, having mapped out its strange rules. In the quantum world, the concept of nothing gets its final, most beautiful and most bizarre twist. In our everyday world, a vacuum is just empty space. But in the quantum world, a vacuum is a thing, turbulent ocean of activity. It is governed by a principle called the uncertainty principle. This principle states that you can never know two complementary properties of a particle with perfect accuracy. The most famous pair is position and momentum. The more you know about where a particle is, the less you can know about how fast it's moving, and vice versa. But this uncertainty principle has a profound consequence for the concept of empty space. It says that you cannot have a state of perfectly zero energy. Why? Because if you knew that the energy in a region of space was exactly zero, you would know it with perfect accuracy, and that would violate the uncertainty principle. So nature is forced to fudge the numbers. It allows for a little bit of wiggle room. What this means is that for extremely short periods of time, Particles can literally pop into existence out of this apparent nothingness. A particle and its antiparticle can appear, live for a fleeting instant, and then annihilate each other, disappearing back into the void from which they came. They are called virtual particles. They are not directly observable, but their effects are. They subtly change the energy of atoms. They are as real as you or me, but they exist on borrowed time and borrowed energy. So here in the heart of modern physics, we have a staggering discovery. Empty space is not empty. It is a frothing, bubbling quantum foam, constantly creating and destroying tiny universes of its own. The nothing of space is actually a something of immense hidden activity. Now take this quantum principle and apply it to the ultimate question. What if the universe itself is a kind of virtual particle? What if the Big Bang was not an explosion from a point into a void, but a quantum fluctuation from a state of no space and no time? In this view, there was no before. There was just the timeless, placeless quantum soup, a realm of pure possibility governed by no rules we can comprehend. And then, for reasons that are not reasons at all, a fluctuation occurred. A tiny bubble of space-time, a seed of potential, popped into existence. And instead of annihilating itself and vanishing, it expanded, it inflated. It grew exponentially fast in a fraction of a second from a quantum seed smaller than a proton to the size of a grapefruit, and then over billions of years to the vast cosmic arena we see today. In this picture, our universe is just one bubble in an endless, possibly infinite quantum froth. Other bubbles, other universes are constantly popping into existence all around us in a dimension we cannot access, in a time that isn't time. They are separate, forever isolated from our own. This is where the question turns from physics to something that feels almost spiritual. If our universe can pop into existence from a quantum nothingness, then the question, what existed before, becomes a question about that quantum realm. But what is that realm? Is it a place? No, because place is space. Is it an eternity? No, because eternity is time without end. And this realm has no time. It is a logical phantom. It is the ultimate nothing. That is the ultimate everything. Feynman had a beautiful way of talking about these limits. He would often use the analogy of a chess game. Imagine you are watching someone play chess, but you don't know the rules. You just see the pieces moving. You watch for a long time and you start to infer some rules. The bishop always stays on its color. The knight moves in an L shape. You build a model of the game based on your observations. But then one day, you see a move that breaks your rule. You realize your rule was incomplete, so you revise it, you add an exception, you learn about castling, you learn about in passant. This process of refining your understanding based on observation is exactly what science does. But Feynman would point out, you will never, by watching the game, be able to deduce the name of the man who invented chess. You will never be able to deduce why he preferred wooden pieces over ivory. Those questions are outside the domain of the game. You have reached the edge of what is knowable from the evidence. When we ask what existed before the universe, we are asking a question that may be like asking for the name of the chess inventor by watching the game. The evidence we have, the universe, its expansion, the cosmic microwave background, the laws of physics is the game itself. We can trace the game back to its first move, the opening gambit of the Big Bang. But to ask what was happening before the game started, to ask who set up the board and why, is to step outside the game. It's not that the question is forbidden. It's that the tools we have, the tools of logic and observation that work so perfectly inside the game, are no longer valid. This is the profound and humbling realization we are left with. We are creatures of the universe. Our brains evolved to hunt, to find shelter, to navigate a world of 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension. They are exquisitely tuned to understand falling apples and flowing rivers. They are not necessarily tuned to understand the absence of apples and the absence of rivers. They are not tuned to comprehend a state where apples and rivers and space and time themselves do not exist. We stand on a tiny island of knowledge in the middle of an infinite ocean of the unknown. And the question of the origin of everything is the shoreline. We can walk to the water's edge. We can dip our toes in. We can feel the vastness of the water, but the water itself, the nature of that ocean, is a mystery. Our greatest theories, from general relativity to quantum mechanics, are the best maps we have of our island. They are astonishingly accurate, but they are silent about the ocean. So what existed before the universe? The most honest answer, the answer that a truly scientific mind like Feynman's would give, is not a story about a god or a cosmic accident. It is a simple, profound, and slightly haunting statement. We don't know, and we may not even have the mental tools to ever find out. The question itself may be as meaningless as asking what color an atom is. The universe began. That is a fact etched into the light left over from its fiery birth. But the state of before is not just hidden from us. It may be logically, definitionally inaccessible. It is the ultimate blank spot in our understanding. And yet the mystery does not end in despair. It ends in wonder, because we are part of that mystery. The atoms in your body, the carbon in your cells, the iron in your blood, these were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. The very space you occupy is a living, breathing quantum entity, buzzing with ghostly activity. You are not just an observer of this grand cosmic show. You are the show itself. You are a way for the universe to look at itself and ask, how did I get here? When you look up at that night sky, at the blackness between the stars, you are no longer looking at a simple void. You are looking at the face of our origin. You are looking at the fabric from which you were woven. The question of what came before is not a puzzle to be solved, but a horizon to be contemplated. It is the boundary of our understanding, a place where our thoughts, like light trying to escape a black hole, are pulled back by the gravity of our own limited perspective. And perhaps in the end, that is enough. Perhaps the greatest gift of science is not to provide all the answers, but to sharpen the questions, to clarify the mystery, and to leave us standing at the edge of that dark ocean, not with fear, but with a profound and exhilarating sense of awe. The universe began, and somehow, impossibly, you are here to think about it. In a cosmos that very well may have sprung from nothing, your existence, your consciousness, your ability to ask the question, that is the most something that could ever be, all from mind of Feynman universe.